subscribe.
The Voices of Victory podcast show.
Voices of Victory.
Vision.
Voices of Victory.
Leadership.
Voices of Victory.
Workplace-related topics.
The Voices of Victory.
Voices of Victory. Voices of Victory. Voices of Victory.
It's time for the show. You are now listening to the Voices of Victory podcast show.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mario Di Leone.
So what happens when someone previously chose disconnection in your life, decided to ghost you or disappear, and then they return? They chose disconnection, and now they return. I'm Mario Di Leone. This is the Voices of Victory podcast show, and today we're going to go over the door principle. And I call it the door principle because it just helps you to remember everything that I'm about to say. There's going to be 4 sections to the door principle, and then we're going to go over some other principles in terms of getting to know somebody. We're going to start off with the door. So the first letter in door is literally D. D means discernment. Discernment is all about clarity over whatever chemistry you might have had. It's about seeing the patterns, not just the moments that are in front of you. It's about reading the energy behind things, not just words. It's not some esoteric idea. It's just getting to understand the vibe. Is there any reciprocity here? Does their energy feel safe? Are you staying connected to yourself? Are you choosing wisdom rather than falling into your wounds from the past? And knowing when to leave versus knowing when to love. It's a very important thing. Discernment is built through self-awareness, through experiences, through reflection, through getting support from other people that you actually trust. So the first D in the door principle is discern and don't default. So be discerning. Don't default. Don't just fall into your traditional patterns. Don't rush into memory. Don't rush into emotion. Pause. Stop. Ask yourself the question, why now? What has changed? And what are they really offering? You could hear them out and still not accept them into your life. That's what's really important. And you have to understand, just because they're back doesn't mean they belong, and it doesn't mean they fit in your life. Just make sure you understand that. Just because they're back doesn't mean they belong. And this comes down to having standards and values. That's the O. Own your standards. Have standards. Because when you revisit what you value, if you value communication, you value effort, you value consistency, you might already have your answer. If communication is very high in terms of value, and that would be a reason to say, you know what, I don't chase inconsistency. I'm sorry. I'm not going to nourish a neglectful relationship. Really what is important to understand. So own your standards. Revisit what you value. If you value communication, you value effort, you value consistency, then these are the things you have to live by. And sometimes living by these things means not bending to somebody else. You have to have your own standards and stick by them. Because if you betray your own standards in this manner, your self-worth will also feel betrayed. That's the point I want to make. So own your standards. Ask yourself, does this really align with my current standards? Is this something that I value? Is there redemption here? Is the person trying to redeem themselves? And even if they do redeem themselves with an apology or words, okay, great. You said sorry. Awesome. Now what? What are you going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? And that's the big question, because it becomes a we thing. It's not always one-sided. You can hear them out, allow them to say their piece, and you could take the time to express what you need to express. You could say, hey, listen, I understand your heartfelt apology, but I really don't think we should move forward. And that's fine. That's totally fine. You can tell them, you could hear them out and still say no. You don't have to buy into the idea that they need to be accepted and that they have to come back. No, not at all. I think most people don't get that. Don't bend your standards in order to save something that the other person decided to make it die. 2 people have to nourish a connection, nourish a relationship, nourish a friendship. So you have to own those standards. Does this align with my current standards? Does this connection really align with the ideas of communication, effort, and consistency? You have to stop betraying your own growth for the temporary comfort. Allow them to come back in only for them to do it again, and that's what you got to watch out for. Consistency is something you value. And that's another thing you can express to people. Listen, I value consistency. What you're showing me really isn't consistent, and I don't value that. And that usually makes people's heads spin, absolutely spin. So that's the O in the door principle. Own your own standards. And another thing is observe their actions. That's the next O. Words are easy. Words are easy, but there's something called congruous behavior. Congruous behavior is when their behavior matches their words. So words are really easy. Watch their behavior. Watch more what they do. You could listen to what they say, but watch what they do. Watch their behavior, because good behavior is consistent because what they say and what they do match up. They line up. They're on the same page. Do they acknowledge their disconnection, or did they just sweep it under the rug? Or did they have a really sorry reason? You know, when I mean a sorry reason, do they have a valid reason, or do they have a pathetic reason? It's like my dog ate my homework. Yeah. Okay, guy. Okay. Yeah. So do they acknowledge that disconnection, or did they just sweep it under the rug? Are they showing up differently, and are they telling you that they're going to show up different? Or are they just circling back out of their own loneliness, their own guilt, or maybe their own convenience? Yeah, that's something to think about. And the last letter of them all is the R, which is respond. Don't react. Don't get caught up in reactions. Don't throw yourself down the judgment road. Hear them out and stand on your values. Hear them out, stand on their values. You know, if you feel that they've done something like incredibly drastic before they disconnected, then you could easily say, hey, listen, I don't think we should move forward with this. It's simple. I don't think there's a reason why we should. I don't see any reason why we should really move forward with this when you did what you did. You know, and you could just leave it at that and tell people, hey, listen, find a short pier somewhere. Okay. If it's really that bad, you got to remember that this is really dependent on any behaviors, actions, fights, or situations that have occurred prior to the disconnection. So the door principle is going to be really based very loosely off of what your experiences were. Now, if you get hooked up into the judgment zone, you start throwing yourself into judge this and judge that, and if you're sitting there judging everything they're doing, you're not helping. You're really not helping yourself. You're really not, because it doesn't have to be all that. You have a choice. There is a choice between respond and react, and we've gotten so conditioned to just reaction. And that's the R. Respond, don't react. You can be kind without opening the actual door. You don't owe them access. And not everybody deserves a space in your life. You don't owe them access just because they decided to show up. So choose your response. You could even go as far as, you know what, I need a couple days to think about it. Why? Yeah, that's usually what you'll get hit with. Why? And they usually ask you the why, because what they're trying to do is open that conversation more. You say, why? I'll let you know. I'll let you know why when that answer comes to my mind. You know, real simple. You don't owe them access just because they returned. Choose a response, choose a boundary if you have to, choose a conversation, or choose closure again. Like if you have to close it, close it. Hey, listen, this was just a chapter, and I don't think that this should become a book. And that's it. This is just a fragment in time. Make it from clarity, not emotional reactivity. It's really easy that people fall into that. There's so much anger and memories and this, that, the other thing that, you know, it's easy to let reactivity stir up. You know, when you've been thinking about something for weeks, let's say, and you've been stirring it up in your mind, comes a thing. And the biggest reflection on this whole thing is, are you letting them back in your life because you actually truly miss them, or because you are actually scared of being alone yourself? Maybe you've been alone for a long time. It's one thing to protect your peace. Like I hear that all the time. I hear people spew that shit all over social media. Protect your peace. Protect your peace. Yeah, I agree. Like I agree with that. Protect your peace. However, protecting your peace goes alongside with taking accountability. Don't ignore your accountability. You had a piece in it. Now, if you had a piece in it, what does that mean? It just means doing your part, doing your part, and you had your part. Maybe you weren't totally innocent in the situation. Maybe you made mistakes. Maybe you had behaviors that you now recognize, right? Whatever the case would be, you have to take ownership of your part, and that's important. But you're not here to abandon yourself for somebody who decided to abandon you, because really, ghosting and coldness is indeed a form of communication. So protect your peace, but also take accountability. Take accountability. The accountability would be like, okay, this is my part, this is my piece, this is what I'm going to say. And you can still choose closure. Not a big deal. Like some people are so hooked up in the protect your peace aspect that they're too chicken shit to approach conflict. They don't understand that there are conflicts that can be beneficial. Conflict is beneficial when two people come to an understanding. If one person doesn't understand and the other one is expressing themselves, then it's like, okay, we need to close this conversation now because I don't really think you're comprehending what I'm trying to say, what I'm really trying to understand. Like you can close the deal at that point. Close the relationship. So protect your peace, honor your growth, and only open the doors with people who align with who you've actually become. It's very important. But understand, conflict can indeed be healthy. People fall into the protect your peace aspect, not realizing. So just to summarize this entire section before we move on to the next section, the door principle is discern, don't default into your emotions right away. Own your own standards. And if you don't have standards, it's probably a good time to start thinking about what values and standards you should have in your relationship. Because every shitty relationship that you experience is like your workout machine to generate higher standards. So you go through a bunch of bad relationships and you learn what your standards are. And as you get older, you realize, you know what? I have a standard for that and I'm not willing to compromise on that. That's an area where I'm not willing to bend. And as long as they're valid, structured standards that are going to benefit you, it's a good idea. So own your, the discern, don't default, own your own standards, observe their actions. Their actions should match their behaviors. Look for congruous behavior. Respond, don't react. Respond, don't react. And ask yourself that question. Like, am I letting them back in because I miss them or because I'm scared of being alone? If you're scared of being alone and that's why you're letting them back in, that's not a good enough reason. Don't operate just out of emotion. Look at the big picture. Let's go on to the next concept. This concept has 5 sections. And this is all about your standards in relationship. And this is going to help reinforce the door principle, by the way. The first thing you have to understand, if you value communication, if communication is really, really high up on your list, then that's important because ghosting and coldness, like I said earlier, ghosting and coldness are forms of communication. Okay, people are choosing disconnection over honesty. It's just easy to do. It's so easy. With technology, it just makes it easy now. So if you value real communication, avoid investing in people who can't even bother or try. They can't make an effort. And if they don't make an effort, you should make an effort. It's like the relationship needs to be nourished from both ends. And if you're the one that's nourishing and they're not, then you really need to question your efforts at that point because you're going to get exhausted at some point. So you're not a dentist, okay? If you always have to pull teeth to get somebody to talk, you need to reconsider whether or not you actually want to be in that type of connection or relationship. If you're just friends, like no big deal, that's fine. Like if you're friends and they're not a talkative person, that's okay, right? But if you're looking for a relationship and you sincerely value communication, then I got news for you. Don't bend your values on somebody who never expresses themselves at all. Don't bend. You're just going to be pulling teeth. And you know what? If you get some evasive behavior, meaning they're constantly trying to evade your questions and all that, and if these questions are really simple, like you're just trying to get to know them and they're just evading them, just say goodbye, move on. Don't invest your time. You are not here to be a dentist, okay? Unless you actually are. All right. In that case, you're still pulling teeth. Another thing is let go of personal blame. You might blame yourself. Oh, well, maybe it's me. Did I do too much? Did I say something wrong? Did I do too much? You gotta remember, their inability to connect is not a reflection of your worth. It is indeed a values mismatch. It's not a flaw. Like, don't take it as a flaw in you. You kind of take their flaws and like copy and paste that onto your soul, onto you. So it can be what we call a value mismatch, where you just don't align on values, but you may choose to ignore that for the sake of trying to preserve something that you think could be more. In other words, you could try to preserve something based on the fact that you think there's future hope in it. So you got to watch out what you project into your future, because you could indeed project that there's something bigger than there actually is. And that's the thing, is we don't see other people as they are. We see other people as we are. Very important. So let go of that personal blame. It could be just a value mismatch. 99.9% of good, solid relationships are all about values and just matching your values to theirs. And we're not talking about whether or not you like the same Netflix crap. We're talking about how you are with money, how you are with certain values like honesty, integrity, communication, stuff like that. Stuff that matter, not the binge watching on Netflix for 9 hours. That's minutia. That's small stuff, small potatoes. And that brings us over to emotional maturity. Emotional maturity equals no excuses. So when they're constantly throwing down excuse after excuse after excuse, you have to understand, in order for you to honor that connection, you have to do it without excusing harmful behavior. So if there's behavior that's harmful or hurtful, don't excuse it, all right? Because if they're making constant excuses, and if you're making constant excuses, you're going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to feel constantly in that state of insecurity. And what that's going to do is keep you nurturing neglect. That's what it's going to do. So true emotional maturity is recognizing when someone just can't show up, they can't meet you, and avoid chasing that. Avoid chasing that, because when you're seeking that external connection and not the internal values, then you're going to fall into all kinds of traps in the connection. Problems, pitfalls. Another concept here is align with real values. And I've discussed this earlier, but I want to feel that this deserves its section of its own, is you should have examples of deep values, not just superficial values, right? Consistent communication during the tough times too, even when the times are tough. Emotional responsibility, not blaming, finger pointing, or just disappearing every time things get hard, which, by the way, that shows a level of resilience. But people don't have any resilience when they just disappear when times are hard. They don't have any coping skills, coping mechanisms. There may be things that prevent them. There's a lot of people, make excuse. They trauma excuse. Oh, but what if they have trauma? Listen, if you want to be their psychologist, you want to be their psychiatrist, you want to be their dentist and pull teeth, and you want to try to, fix or repair the other person, I got news for you. Fixing and repairing the other person is going to literally hurt you in the end, because there's people that are just not ready for that. They are not ready for that, or the trauma is too deep for a person of your caliber. They may need professional help above and beyond you, and you need to be smart enough to recognize that. Very important, because that's about emotional responsibility. They should have a willingness to work through conflict, not avoid it. Most people, they just want to avoid it, and that's what happens. You can have an amazing relationship and have a little bit of conflict, and that conflict can bring some beautiful sexual tension with you and your partner. It can bring some great tension alongside with things. That conflict could be fun. You can channel it. We push conflict away, and what happens is we're not realizing that conflict is more of a bridge. You have to be able to bridge that. Think of conflict as like you and your partner are standing on a bridge, and there's a little obstacle in front of you that you have to get over in order to bridge that connection, to get closer to them in proximity, physically. Think of it that way. So avoiding conflict is just, going to be problematic at the end of the day. Matter of fact, you could have a perfectly healthy relationship and you avoid conflict for many years. Eventually you wonder, why did the relationship collapse? Why did it collapse? Well, you avoided conflict all the time. You constantly swept it under the rug. You say, well, I want to fix this. Let me, and guys especially, we want to rush to repair things. We want to go into Mr. Fix-It mode. And the fact is, if you're a guy, start listening. You have 2 ears for a reason. Listen twice as much as you speak. Start listening. Start being present, and just allow them to vent. Allow them to express what they feel. That's so important. So important. Communication is not something we were necessarily taught. You either had good examples of it, or you had really shitty examples. Either one. So align with that willingness to work through conflict. You don't have to avoid it. If they don't match where you are, if you feel that you're not a match, but somehow things are being it feels forced in some way, that's not love, that's misalignment. If you sense it's just not falling into place, that that you're constantly having to bend what you like, or bend something, just let it go. Just allow things. There are certain things that were meant to fade, allow them to fade. And then the last one is really feel free to release and reframe. So, releasing would just be release the person, let them go. No revenge, no bitterness. That's just all that is putting yourself on the emotional hamster wheel and just repeating negative emotions that are only impacting your mental health and your health, period. I mean, if you want to stay there, be my guest. I'm not going to stop you. But quite honestly, you should have the sensory acuity to understand if you're further away from a problem or to a solution. Are you closer or further away from a solution? So release the person. Not everyone's meant to stay. Some people are just a chapter and they were certainly not the whole damn book, okay? Because if you are chasing connection, you're chasing avoidance and all that, you're not a dentist. It's time to write a new chapter, move on, one that aligns with your standards. And again, I want to be redundant about this. If you don't have standards in relationships, start getting them on paper. Most of us will look to the standards of our parents, which is pure bullshit. Pure bullshit, utter bullshit. Because if that's your only model, you have to understand that your model for relationships is not a fixed model because human beings are not fixed. Let's get that very clear. How could you create something so finite and so fixed when in actuality you are growing, shaping, and developing? You are in a constant state of flux and a constant state of growth. Let's get that clear. So, just to recap this section and we're done. Communication is a value. Ghosting and coldness are forms of communication. If they're choosing disconnection over honesty, you're not a dentist. Let go of personal blame. If people have the inability to connect, it's not a reflection of your worth. It's probably a values mismatch, and it's certainly not a flaw inside you. Emotional maturity. It will show their emotional maturity. And emotional maturity means having no excuses. You can honor the connection without excusing harmful behavior. Right? If they're making constant excuses, you're going to keep, like, if you're constantly bending things based on their excuses, you're nurturing neglect. You are nurturing neglect. You are feeding the dead. That emotional maturity is recognizing when someone can't meet you, and don't chase that. Align with your real values. Take a look at how you value emotional responsibility, consistency, communication. If they don't match, that's not love, that's misalignment. And release and reframe. Reframe means to pivot the belief, to shift your belief from point A to point B, right? Pivot, release, let them go, and then change the meaning by looking at it differently. You could always reframe different things. You know what I mean? You can do what we call a reframe. Now, reframes is a way, like if we take a look at ghosting, like ghosting itself, people will look at ghosting. It's like, oh, that's a problem. I was screwed over. I was ghosted. Ghosting is not necessarily a rejection. So when we reframe, ghosting isn't rejection. It's a revelation. They've showed you who they are. That's what's important. The way someone exits your life or leaves your life is the information that you were actually missing so you can understand who they really are. That you didn't really lose something real. You were spared. You dodged a bullet from something completely unstable. And that ghosting ends that whole projection. Your worth is not negotiable. And ghosting didn't reduce you. It's so important. That's just a way to understand what a reframe actually is. You see what we did there with the reframe? We pivoted the meaning and belief. Very important. That's what NLP. I love neuro-linguistic programming. It's supportive. So release and reframe. And that is it. That is all I'm going to say today on today's episode. We are done here. Have a great day. See you on the next episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe. If you like this channel, if you want to like, subscribe, and share it to people who actually need it, okay? On every single podcast, every podcast that I have, every episode goes straight to YouTube. And in the description box, there's my buy me a coffee link. So you can buy me a coffee in order to support the channel. You could also do Voices of Victory podcast, right? You can find me that way, Mario Di Leone. But just keep in mind, this will go straight to it. So if you want to contribute to the channel, click the Buy Me a Coffee link. If you're visiting me on Podbean, you could also see that same link listed inside of the Podbean description. Have a great day. See you on the next episode.